All right. Hello, everyone, on this snowy, gorgeous February morning. We're talking about the American Revolution. So here we go. Key terms: patriot, loyalist, Hessian, privateer, morale. We need to know what that is. Treaty of Paris that ends the war of the Revolution. Okay. Questions we're going to be asking ourselves: how did the Continental Army change during the war? How was the British Army defeated? Then, what were the effects of the American Revolution? Okay, so let's take a look at some questions here. Number one, why was there a heavy concentration of British troops in Massachusetts? 1975. Well, King George was very angry with Massachusetts. Okay, you had the Boston Tea Party. Okay, you had a lot of protests with regards to the Townshend Acts. So there's going to be a heavy troop presence in Massachusetts because King George wanted to quell these colonists who were getting a little antsy. Okay, so why was there a heavy troop concentration? Because that's where most of the protests were in the New England colonies. Okay, so the British military is going to be like, look, we know that most of these colonists are, out in the like the rural areas of Massachusetts, and we want to put a stop to this. So they get wind that there's like there's armories out there for the colonists. They have weapons out there, so they want to end it quick. All right. Well, so they march from Boston to Lexington and Concord, and when they get to Lexington and Concord, actually the colonists beat them back. All right. And what actually happens is the British troops, retreat back to Boston. And as they're going back to Boston, all of these pockets of rebel resistance, if you will, are picking off the troops as they're fleeing back to Boston. So Lexington and Concord, those are the so-called shots heard around the world. That is what starts the American Revolution. So Bunker Hill is in Boston, okay? And what ends up happening is that's where the colonial troops try and get the high ground on the British troops, which if you see on the map right here, the British are in the red, okay? Now, there's Breeds Hill and Bunker Hill, and these are like the two high points off the Charles River. Well, what happens is the British troops are going to attack, and they are actually going to win this battle in that they push the colonial troops off of Breeds Hill back to Bunker Hill, and even what happens at Bunker Hill is the colonists retreat. But way more British soldiers are killed than colonial soldiers or militia, if you will. And this kind of like says, hey, by the way, this isn't going to be easy. All right. The colonists really do not like the British here. So this isn't going to be like a quick, 1-2 punch from the British to end everything. Okay. So you have two sets of colonists. You have the ones that want to rebel, your so-called patriots, all right, and then you have the loyalists. Okay. Well, why would you be a loyalist? Why would you be loyal to the British government? Well, British government's pretty well run. Okay. It's a known entity. All right. And I know what I'm getting with the British government. And I'm probably already, like, my businesses are with the British government. Like, it's economically beneficial for me to be a loyalist. Okay. Why would I want to be a patriot? Okay. Well, I don't like living under British rule. All right. I am angry about there's no representation. Okay. I don't like all these taxes. All right. And I also think that the British are riling up the Native Americans against me as well. So those are reasons to be a patriot. Okay. Well, what about other groups? So there's three other groups that we got to take a look at here. If you take a look at Native Americans, okay, Native Americans are, it's pretty much each individual tribe is going to side with, whichever side is best, does the most and best business with them. So some Native American tribes are going to side with the British. Some Native American tribes are going to side with the colonists. All right. So who's been nicer to us? All right. Slaves. Slaves tended to fight with the Patriots because most of the people in the southern colonies were loyalists. Most of the people in the southern colonies were loyalists because they did a lot of business with Britain. Okay, so if I'm a slave, I don't like those people because those colonists are the ones that are enslaving me. All right, so slaves tended to lean towards the Patriots. All right, another group, Quakers. Quakers tried to stay away from all of this because Quakers are pacifists. Quakers did not want to fight in the war because they did not believe in Quakers being they're going to be in the Pennsylvania area. All right. This is a factual picture of George Washington. I think it's after the Battle of Trenton, if I remember correctly. But yeah, that's a factual picture. What advantages did the colonists have? Well, the colonists are fighting on their own home turf. The colonists are fighting on their own home turf. Okay, so they have knowledge of the lay of the land. Okay, they also are fighting for a reason. All right, they have a cause. All right, it's a lot easier to fight for something if you believe in a cause than if you are kind of being forced to because you're in a military. So the two main advantages that the colonists have are knowledge of the home turf and the fact that they're fighting for a cause. Now, disadvantages, all right, lack of numbers. Okay, there's way more British troops than there are colonial militia. Okay, also, colonists don't have a lot of supplies. They don't have a lot, all right, and so they don't have weapons. They don't have, I mean, they don't have uniforms. Also, most of the militia are poorly trained. Okay. What about the British? All right, what advantages do the British have? Super well trained. It's the best military in the world. Okay. They also have a navy. Colonists don't have a navy. They do not have a navy. All right. The British have AP ranking. Okay. At the time, both AP and the coaches poll. All right. The British Navy is number one. Okay. So they're well trained. Okay. They have a lot of supplies and they have a navy. All right. And they have better leadership. Okay. They have more well-trained leaders. Let's say that they have more well-trained leaders. Disadvantages. A lot of these guys have been fighting for well over 7 years. Remember, the French and Indian War is also known as the 7 Years' War because it lasted 7 years. So these troops were fighting over in Europe or maybe fighting in the colonies. They're kind of like done with war. So you have the fact that they're exhausted. You have the fact that they have no idea where the hell they are. All right. If these troops were fighting over in Europe, they've never been in the colonies. They have no idea what the hell the land's like. All right. So that lack of home field advantage is actually going to be a problem. All right. The start. Okay. Who's in charge of the Continental Army? George Washington. All right. He is the unanimous pick. He fought for the British in the French and Indian War, learned a lot about military tactics. So he is, he is going to make some mistakes, but he is very smart. All right. Where does the British military attack first? Well, they first attack the Continental Army in New York, and they drive Washington out of New York. Okay. The Continental Congress had set up in Philadelphia, and they're actually going to have to retreat, all right, because they attack in New York. Washington has to retreat, goes to Philadelphia, has to get the hell out of Philadelphia, all right, because the British military under Howe is just, they're running roughshod over George Washington, all right. The first few months of the American Revolution do not go very well for the colonial army. All right, so they attack New York and then they attack Philadelphia. Okay, how'd it go? Not well, not great, Bob. All right, how was morale during their retreat? How was morale during any retreat? It was awful. Okay, so they end up going to Valley Forge. Okay, in right across the Delaware River from Philadelphia in the Delaware Valley. All right. It is freaking cold. Every winter during the Revolution is like ridiculously cold. Like we're talking the coldest of the century cold. I think 1777 is like the coldest, or 1778, I think, winter. That is like the worst winter in like the 1700s. That's how cold it was. It wasn't like, hey, it's good. No, it was freaking freezing. All right, so morale is not great. And what actually happens is, in order to pick up morale and also get some much needed supplies, Washington is going to attack Trenton, which is right across the Delaware River from Valley Forge. And so Trenton is going to be run by a bunch of Hessians, Hessian. All right, and these Hessians are German, or what we later called Germany, but they're paid mercenaries. All right, so Britain's able to like, hey, let's bring in the Hessians. All right, they're going to fight for us. And literally, what happens is Washington crosses the Delaware River with Alexander Hamilton in these rickety ass. I mean, this painting up here, that's how it's like stylized or whatever, but that's not this painting up here. There's no way those boats were that nice. All right, they were awful boats, if you could call them boats. Okay, go across the Delaware River, Christmas Day, 1776, and 17. Anyways, cross the Delaware, take the Hessians by surprise because they're all drunk because it was Christmas, so they're all partying, and is able to get some much needed supplies, like shoes, okay, ammo, and it's kind of a boost for the rest of the military. Like, hey, we can win some battles because it was not. All right, and that's all I got for Going and How coming up on the next episode.